Hello and welcome to another episode of What's Up, Prof? Hi, Walter.
Hi, Martin.
Are we shaking things up?
No, they're shaking them themselves.
We've got nothing to do with it.
We've got nothing to do with it. It's just happening.
Well, before we get into this, let's open with a word of prayer. Our Heavenly Father, we are living in very tumultuous times, and we cannot go ahead if you are not with us. So we ask, please enlighten our minds with the Holy Spirit, and that we do the things that you want us to do. In Jesus' name, amen.
Martin, when the image of the beast is formed, then we can expect the final events to take place.
Will that be also then running up to the healing of the wound?
Yes, the wound will then be healed to the point where their legislation becomes international legislation enforced by the second beast, the United States of America. Now, we've been talking a lot about this, so our backdrop, I think, is, rather interesting. You have that fist coming out of the ground, power unto the beast. And there's an interesting emblem on that wrist over there, which is, of course, the Vatican's emblem. And then you have the Capitol in the back with the goddess on top. So, Martin, where are we in the stream of time, and what do the events of the last few weeks tell us? Shall we start with a little dance, Martin?
Yeah, maybe it's a good thing.
But people might become confused and think that we are taking sides here. No, we're only happy that the end is near and that we can see prophecy unfolding before our eyes.
Exactly. So don't get ideas.
No, don't get funny ideas.
Darius Smith with a sack.
Well, check the flag here. It was thrown away.
So, Martin, if the second beast is going to give power unto the first beast, Roman Catholicism, then we can expect a lot of these agents hidden in all of these societies and groups that are endeavoring to get this power enacted.
Yeah, of the first beast.
Of the first beast. And they have lots of time because they plan not over years or decades or centuries. They plan over millennia.
So and another thing is, sometimes they are in plain sight, and you get fond of the ideologies that they have.
Or they induce a fondness. So that is wondering, receiving the mindset of the beast. So let's make a disclaimer so that even if we do a jig, Martin, that doesn't mean that we are jigging because we are in favor of the ideology. We're jigging because we could be going home soon.
Yes, for sure, for sure.
When they sing the song of Moses and the Lamb, Miriam did a little dance, didn't she? With a tambourine, so maybe we can do one too. So, Martin, let's go back and look at the role players in the Heritage Foundation. The so-called battle between the Economic Forum and the Heritage Foundation ideology, all part of the Hegelian dialectic to receive this mindset.
For sure.
So let's have a look at some of this information.
The one thing that Davos, you might say, and the people come here stand up for is liberal democracy. So if the idea that's going to be swept under the table is part of the idea, hopefully that's not what he means. What do you mean? What do you think he means by retribution?
Well, it's laughable that you would, or anyone would describe Davos as protecting liberal democracy. With all due respect, nothing personal, but that's your part of the problem. Political elites tell the average people on 3 or 4 or 5 issues that the reality is X, when in fact reality is Y.
That was Heritage Foundation President Kevin Roberts holding nothing back as he schools global elitists gathered in Davos about who the real threats to our freedoms are. Kevin Roberts joins us now with more of his message. Kevin, we were watching, Rachel and I both have the same question. Did they invite you? Did you crash the party? How did you end up there?
Oh, man, they invited me. I never would have gone there on my own volition. And in fact, when the invitation arrived at Heritage, Pete, I told my staff, y'all are playing a joke on me. I've not been invited to the World Economic Forum. But I'm glad I went, because just real quick point here, which I know you and Rachel not only agree with, but you really personify every time you're on TV. You know that the average person is really frustrated with what self-appointed elites tell us. And so it's a privilege. It's the greatest privilege of my life to go speak on their behalf.
No doubt. So you were there as part of a panel entitled "What to Expect from a Possible Republican Administration." So were you almost there like were you meant to be kind of like a zoo animal for those at Davos? Like, who are these Republicans that might take power again?
Yeah, that's how they looked at me, especially after the panel. You know, as you might imagine, there were only a couple people who came up and told me they agreed with me.
Sure.
And in fact, it reminded me of when I was the one conservative Christian professor in the entire College of Arts and Sciences at a major university in the Southwest. So I guess to some extent, I've had a lot of experience with that kind of thing. And I kind of relish it, because when we get the opportunity, as y'all know, to speak truth to power and to do it eyeball to eyeball, there is nothing more satisfying.
Absolutely. And
so, Martin, it seems as if the one side has now taken the ascendancy, right?
It seems like it.
Over the other side. So the Hegelian mindset shift, by creating the ridiculous, you get to the synthesis.
Remember how many years ago, when you had the rhetoric that we have to drain the swamp, the whole time the World Economic Forum and all the global elitists, and then the Biden administration took over.
And actually furthered this agenda to rile up the people even more, to move them to another position. Because you have to move the left a little bit to the center and the right a little bit to the center, so that you can get this synthesis.
So what did we say the whole time? We said that the pendulum will
swing.
And now it did. So now people will get sympathy or will stand with what we've just seen.
Now, Martin, what's fascinating to me is that the two that are in that video that we just played, the one is Pete Hegseth, who's now been nominated as Defense Secretary.
Yeah.
Now, that's a fascinating thing. And the other one, Kevin Roberts, is part of the Heritage Foundation. Now, Martin, didn't Trump isolate himself or distance himself from that ideology in order not to totally alienate the Democratic vote?
Yeah, no, completely.
So it's very interesting how these role players come together, and we need to know who are they and what are they doing, what do they belong to, and does it further the agenda of the first beast?
Exactly, because we can easily get on the bandwagon and want to join behind these guys.
Because they're bringing such a logical message against this backdrop of, excessive liberalism.
Yeah.
So let's have a look at what Kevin Roberts actually has to say and what he stands for.
Yeah.
Let him speak for himself.
If I were, as a Roman Catholic, if I were sitting with my family or with friends in this room in a Catholic setting, I could speak in a certain way. The difficult thing for those of us who are in politics is that, even at Heritage, where we're really zealously focused on policy, not elections, policy outcomes often are determined by who wins the election. So we have to pay attention to the elections. The challenge for us is we feel like Rome, Washington, is on fire, and that there isn't enough time. But in fact, we are on God's time. And it's trite to say that, but we also know that it's true. And we know that Mother Church doesn't think in terms of days and months and presidential election cycles. She doesn't even think in terms of decades. She thinks in terms of centuries and millennia. And I have to tell myself, as an American exceptionalist, a historian of the American founding who loves this country and can never give back to it what she has given to him, that even America can get it wrong sometimes.
Well, Martin, it seems Mother Church has taught him well. She thinks in terms of millennia, and her aim is to get the power back
Yes.
that she lost.
That's the main aim.
Now, which organization, Martin, is the one that was raised up to counteract the Reformation and get that power back?
The Jesuits.
Yes, that was the whole aim of the Jesuits. They've done a good job educating most of the role players that we're dealing with in the first place, including the presidents and their children.
So it doesn't matter which side.
So let's have a look at Kevin Roberts as architect of Project 2025. The Guardian tells us that he has close ties to the radical Catholic group Opus Dei, God's work. That's what it stands for. And these people are known for wearing bracelets that cause pain to remind them of their obligation towards Mother Church. So their efforts are aimed at restoring the power of the papacy.
Cool.
So when the image of the beast is going to give their power unto the beast, then that is quite incredible. So according to The Guardian, he has close ties to Opus Dei. So the Heritage Foundation president and architect of Project 225, the conservative think tank roadmap for a second Trump presidency, has close ties and received regular spiritual guidance from an Opus Dei-led center in Washington, D.C., a hub of activity for the radical and secretive Catholic group. Roberts acknowledged in a speech last September that for years he has visited the Catholic Information Center, a K Street institution headed by an Opus Dei priest and incorporated by the Archdiocese of Washington on a weekly basis for Mass and formation. Martin, we need to speak about this formation a little bit more, don't you think so?
We definitely have to, because that has infiltrated Christianity.
And that comes from the exercises of Loyola, which make the experience nominative instead of the word, a very dangerous precedent.
Especially where we live now, in the time that we live now. And if Satan will be masquerading himself as an angel of light,
yes,
it's very important.
So Opus Dei also organizes monthly retreats at the CIC. Gareth Gore, the author of the forthcoming book on Opus Dei, said members of the Catholic organization are engaged in a political project shrouded in a veil of spirituality. Could that be an Ignatian spirituality?
For sure. That's why that formation is spiritual formation.
This was the weapon to destroy Protestantism, get away from a word-based religion to a sensual religion, and one that is experience-based and not word-based. The group's founder, Saint Josemaria Escriva, saw his followers as part of a rising militia, Gore said, who were seeking to enter battle against the enemies of Christ. Now we must understand in this thinking that they have, this Christ is not necessarily the same Christ as the Bible, right?
That's very important.
Roberts had said he is good friends with J.D. Vance, Trump's running mate, and Vance has praised Project 225 as having some good ideas. They have to be careful how they phrase themselves, right? Vance, who converted to Catholicism in 2019, also wrote the foreword for Roberts' forthcoming book, praising the author for articulating a genuinely new future for conservatism. We are now all realizing that it's time to circle the wagons and load the muskets in the fight that lay ahead. These ideas are an essential weapon, Vance wrote. Now, Martin, one of the techniques that Rome has used for centuries is to infiltrate denominations and organizations as Protestants. And once the main objective has been achieved, then they can openly go back to what they were before or what they envisioned. I'm not saying it is the case here, but it is a distinct way in which they operate. Remember Cardinal Newman?
Yes.
He was never Cardinal Newman until he had actually completed the job of the Oxford movement to destroy Protestantism, and then he was rewarded as a Roman Catholic cardinal. So he left Protestantism. So are these muskets ready to be loaded? Are the wagons ready to give the power back unto the beast?
I think for sure. It's interesting to see that all the cabinet members of Trump, the appointees, and we'll see that they all have affiliation with the Kevin Roberts and his Heritage Foundation.
Yes. And they are probably highly aligned with what the Roman Catholic agenda really is.
It's just also interesting, like you mentioned before, you've got thesis and antithesis. So you have the World Economic Forum with Klaus Schwab and all his cronies.
Yes.
And now you've got the Heritage Foundation and all their cronies.
Yes.
And this is almost like they're against each other, but for the greater good, they're actually
part of it. You know, this is a yin-yang philosophy.
Yeah.
You can be a member of the Church of Satan, or you can be illuminated and be on the light side rather than the dark side. And irrespective of which side you're on, the king or the queen, as it was in the past, would knight them.
Yeah. It's like black magic and white magic.
Yes, this is exactly what it is, for the greater good. Now, let's have a look at Pete Hegseth. And this is also very interesting. This is the Times of Israel. And they're saying that Trump's nominee to lead the Pentagon has multiple Christian and crusader-inspired tattoos. Now, these are tattoos of Roman Catholic orders, secret societies. I mean, the one on his chest there, for example. So his tattoos, political views and religious affiliations and background are consistent with an extreme strain of Christian nationalism, according to Matthew Taylor, a scholar of the Institute for Islamic, Christian and Jewish Studies. Specifically, he appears to belong to a French denomination known as Reformed Reconstructionism. Now, we've dealt with that before. This is power, religious power, and secular power. So this is the image of the beast to its perfection. But who is it supposed to elevate? Isn't it the first beast?
Exactly.
Are we seeing this, Martin?
Oh.
So what do they believe in? Which believes in applying biblical Christian law to society. Now, this is where the catch comes in, because this Christian law is not biblical law, but Catholic law.
That is the crux.
And it differs from biblical law. And the Bible is very clear. In vain they worship me, teaching for doctrine the commandments of men. And it's, of course, exclusively male leadership and actively preparing the world for the prophesied return of Jesus. Martin, which return of Jesus are they waiting for? If they want to build a kingdom down here, and the Bible is very clear that the kingdom is not of this world, but will be set up by Jesus himself, can there be a millennial reconstructionist kingdom before that? Surely not.
No. And that is why it will be so dangerous, because Satan will be coming masquerading himself as that Jesus.
Yes. One of Hegseth's most prominent tattoos is a large Jerusalem cross on his chest, a symbol featuring a large cross potent with smaller Greek crosses on each of its 4 quadrants. The symbol was used in the Crusades and represents the kingdom of Jerusalem that the Crusaders established. So this is a heritage from the Knights Templars.
Yeah.
And remember that to be a Knights Templar is one of the highest orders that you can achieve in Freemasonry as well. Hegseth also has Deus vult, Latin for God wills it, tattoos on his biceps. The phrase was used as a rallying cry for the First Crusade in 1096. It is also the closing sentence of Hegseth's 2020 book titled American Crusade. The slogan has been used by members of far-right white supremacist and Christian nationalist groups. Now, Martin, the way in which that is written, of course, is written from the other side of the perspective.
Exactly.
So read between the lines. But the facts are nevertheless what they are.
Exactly.
The ideology behind it might be a little bit extreme. So
they give it a bit more meat than it should, but
yes.
You can see where it's heading.
What else does he have? He also has a cross and a sword tattooed on his arm, which he says represents a New Testament verse. And the verse is Matthew 10:34, which says, "Do not think that I have come to bring peace to the earth. I have not come to bring peace, but a sword." Israel, Christianity, and my faith are things I care deeply about, Hegseth told Media Inc. He has also said that the idea of rebuilding the biblical temple in Jerusalem's Temple Mount is a miracle that could happen in our lifetime. So here we have basically a crusader who is now spearheading the military.
The most powerful military on earth.
Yes, well, Trump says he's going to make sure that it remains the most powerful on earth. So, Martin, was America raised up to be the military arm of the Jesuits?
Yes.
Didn't Maryland belong to the Jesuits? Doesn't the White House stand on Jesuit ground? Martin, this is all very fascinating. Hidden under a garb, a lamb-like garb. Now, Martin, when something is lamb-like, is it a lamb?
No.
That's an interesting point, don't you think?
Very, because people tend to miss that portion in the prophecy.
Yes, like unto a lamb.
Like unto a lamb.
So this Project 2025 that Donald Trump tried to distance himself from, it seems like his administration is very much part and parcel of it rather than distant from it.
For sure.
Now, the other interesting thing is we've always said that it doesn't really matter which party wins, right?
We've always maintained.
Because both parties, according to the Jesuits themselves, remember we mentioned Quigley, who said it doesn't matter which party is involved. So let's hear from Roberts what he has to say on the issue.
And really, not that at Heritage we feel either entitled or defensive about Project 2025. We just are resolute because it's now policy-making season. This is something that we've done for 44 years, since 1980 with Ronald Reagan. We understand that, of course, President-elect Trump and Vice President-elect Vance will make all the decisions. Having said that, Project 2025 is the single greatest, biggest scope of personnel and policy work that's ever happened, and we're very proud of it. It represents several dozen million Americans, if you think about the 110 organizations who are part of it. Once again, totally up to the president-elect and vice president-elect. We operate in service to them and to the American people, but ultimately, to get to the heart of your question, Joe, the American people have won here, and we look forward to playing whatever role, formally or informally, that we can to support that.
Well, did you anticipate the backlash? You mentioned Ronald Reagan. The mandate for leadership was something that was actually pretty well received as a policy paper. It helped to put Heritage on the map. Was this supposed to be another version of that, or sort of a quiet policy paper that you would provide whatever the incoming administration would be?
It is very much designed, as all of our previous projects have been designed, which is to be of service. And if I had to predict, the next administration is going to be filled with excellent men and women, not just because of the work we did, but most importantly because of the great acumen of the president-elect and vice president-elect and the team that they're already assembling.
We learned one name just over the weekend. It's Tom Homan, who's going to be the border czar, as Donald Trump is referring to it. And that was from a post on Truth.
Tom Homan is also a visiting fellow at Heritage. He's a good friend. I was texting him earlier, congratulating him on that. And look, the most important thing, forget Tom's professional affiliation, forget that he was a Project 2025 author. The most important thing is that he is aligned not just with President Trump, but also with the American people who want to bring an end to the ridiculous disorder on the southern border. Tom's going to do a great job there. In other words, Joe, neither today nor a year from today am I going to be sitting in my office at Heritage sort of keeping score about who's in the administration and not. That's not why we do what we do. We exist every day to be of service to the American people and to the administration. For that matter, if the Democrats had won, and although it would have been very surprising for them to have called us and say, you got a name for so-and-so agency, we would have done that too. This is the whole point about the work that Heritage does.
Understood.
So, Martin, did he say it went back to the times of Ronald Reagan?
Yes. They were instrumental in the Ronald Reagan era with that whole running and getting the Holy Alliance thing going.
Now, this Holy Alliance, they tried to create diplomatic ties with the Vatican under Truman already. And the Protestants in America made such a hoo-ha that never floated. They couldn't get it passed. And then Ronald Reagan came and unilaterally just did it.
But didn't he? Was he not almost also assassinated?
Well, Martin, it's interesting that both he and John Paul II experienced a similar occurrence. I often wonder about those things. And, you know, I'm almost like the doubting Thomas. I would like to see the marks of the bullets, but we have been denied that privilege. It's interesting that the beast also received a mortal wound and lived. And it seems that Ronald Reagan, who created that diplomatic union, received a wound and lived. And the other party, John Paul II, similarly also received a wound and lived.
And both's popularity just shot up.
It's like a script of a movie. Are we in a movie?
I don't know. It's very peculiar.
Okay. Now they spoke about the border Tsar. The new man who is very firm on this issue and is going to rectify the issue. And he has ties to Project 2025.
Yeah, he wrote an article, or one of the chapters or something. I don't
Exactly. So how can one distance oneself from this if the whole administration seems to be involved, right?
True.
So are they going to work closely with Donald Trump or are they not? Let them say for themselves.
Even if they don't do it directly, through the rest of the administration that's there, it will be done.
Well, let's see what happens. Let's see what they say.
Have you talked to Donald Trump since he won?
We've not spoken yet, but I anticipate that we will.
I mean, he's got to be pretty keyed up on what Heritage is offering here. He was on the record when the team was trying to distance itself from you. I have no idea who is behind it. He put on X, I disagree with some of the things they're saying, and some of the things they're saying are absolutely ridiculous and abysmal. Do you have a sense of what he likes or doesn't like here?
I think the key thing is that President Trump saw the branding as a liability in the political season. But I also would anticipate moving forward that the president-elect and vice president-elect, with whom we maintain great relationships, will also understand that it's the policy-making season that Heritage and all of the other groups who are part of our project are built for. And if they're looking, for example, as President Trump said this morning, to dismantle the U.S. Department of Education, we know exactly where he can go for that plan. Totally up to him about whether he uses the plan. But that's what I'm talking about, Joe, when I mentioned that great ideas and great people rise to the top. All of the political calculations of the last few months, which were very understandable and about which we have no hard feelings, are in the past. We're now in the policy-making season. We think that this is the beginning of a golden era of conservative reform. This is the beginning of a golden era of conservative reform.
This will truly be the golden age of America. That's what we have to have. Many people have told me that God spared my life for a reason. And that reason was to save our country and to restore America to greatness. And now we are going to fulfill that mission together. We're going to fulfill that mission.
I will say that because the work of Project 2025 represents the conservative movement, it would be very difficult for anybody to implement policies on education, on the border, on taxation, without at least consulting those ideas and people. That's not some arrogant or hubristic comment on our part. That's just the nature of how policymaking works.
Martin, this is all very interesting. So that was just policy. That was just electioneering. So this is really the hub. And they're going to dismantle the Department of Education. And they've said it on numerous occasions. Martin, who were the schoolmasters of Europe?
The Jesuits.
The Jesuits. And didn't they bring that school mastery to the United States and the entire world? And Martin Luther had said that if the Bible is ever removed from the school, that'll be a one-way road to perdition, right? And he envisioned that if this were to continue for 100 years, then they'd have to start the Reformation all over again. Now, what's interesting, Martin, is that they're also a kind of Hegelian dialectic.
Yeah.
So being in control of the education system, you push it over the brink so that it becomes so ridiculous that it needs dismantling. And then you bring it back, and you bring the Ten Commandments back, and you bring the Bible back. But you've totally changed the mindsets about the Bible. You've replaced the Bible with experiential religion, so it's not really a threat anymore. It's just sort of like a historic document that's lying over there. And then you bring your own set of commandments contrary to God's commandments, and then the beast is in control.
That's it. And because people are so brainwashed through all the ages now, they don't even realize that it's the commandments of Rome.
And they think it's wonderful. We're going back to a sensibility here.
Yeah. Wasn't it also interesting that they were both talking about a golden age for America? Isn't that New Age talk?
That is New Age talk, and maybe it is Reconstructionism. So what do we have here? Donald Trump. Kamala Harris did nothing as 120,000 Armenian Christians were horrifically persecuted and forcibly displaced in Artsakh. Christians around the world will not be safe if Kamala Harris is president of the United States. When I am president, Donald Trump said, I will protect persecuted Christians. I will work to stop the violence and ethnic cleansing, and we will restore peace between Armenia and Azerbaijan. Now, he's coming forward as the champion of Christianity.
Yeah, and the big peacemaker.
But look at his team. What is this Christianity that he's championing?
It's actually dominionism.
And Catholicism.
100%.
These are knights. These are Catholic knights. If they're associated with Opus Dei and remnants of the Templars, then they are under Jesuit jurisdiction.
They're the militant arm of the Catholics.
Christians elected Donald Trump so he can finish what Jesus started. Martin, do you think that Jesus needs someone to finish what he didn't finish?
Well, you will let prophecy then be fulfilled.
I think we could say maybe Christians elected Donald Trump so that he could fulfill the prophecy that Jesus had predicted.
Exactly.
How about that?
I think that's correct.
Donald Trump needs to thank Jesus Christ for his election. In case you missed it, 62% of Protestants and 56% of Catholics voted for Trump, while 79% of Jews and 72% of atheists voted against him. This means Trump's mandate is to finish what Jesus Christ started. And here is what Jesus started. Jesus went straight to the temple and threw out everyone who had set up shop buying and selling animals for sacrifice. He kicked over the tables of the loan sharks and the stalls of the dove merchants, saying, "My house was designated a house of prayer. You have made it a hangout for thieves." Now, there was room for the blind and the crippled to get in, Matthew 21:12-14. Well, it's not the King James Version, but it's close to what the sentiment was. Now, Martin, isn't it amazing that this very power that is quoting this verse controls the entire economy and everything that goes in and out? And then they quote Q, which is a little bit outdated, although this comes from the 11th of November, 2024.
Yeah, I think he's still active.
You think he's working behind the scenes? The fact Q posted the list of Rothschild central banks and Elon Musk X, it shows the US Space Force is aware of the nature of what they are dealing with. These central banks create money out of nothing, and this is literally sucking the life force out of this planet. For example, they are pushing decarbonization based on lies about carbon. The ultimate controllers of the system are the Vatican, named after Vatica, the goddess of the underworld, and the Black Sun organization. When we went to visit them, they said their god was a black hole in the center of the galaxy. This stained glass from their cathedral in Milan shows a black hole with light around it. So, Martin, this is a web page that is, well, let's say, not very favorable.
No, it's now again, like the Times of Israel was speaking much more for the liberal side. This is again speaking for the conservative side, this Hegelian dialectic.
Yes, but they recognize the Vatican as a danger, but the conservative side is actually furthering the aims of the Vatican. Now, Sylvester Stallone had something interesting to say. Shall we listen to what he had to say?
Sure.
When I did Rocky, if you remember, the first image was a picture of Jesus, and it says Resurrection AC Club. I found a church that had been converted to a boxing ring. So the image pans down from Jesus onto Rocky being hit. And at that moment, he was a chosen person, and that's how I began the journey. Something was going to happen. This man was going to go through a metamorphosis and change lives, just like President Trump. We are in the presence of a really mythical character. I love mythology. And this individual does not exist on this planet. Nobody in the world could have pulled off what he pulled off, so I'm in awe. When George Washington defended his country, he had no idea that he was going to change the world. Because without him, you can imagine what the world would look like. Guess what? We got the second George Washington. Congratulations!
Shall we remind the American public that Washington was a high Freemason?
I think it might be necessary because a lot of people don't know that.
And that all the cornerstones that were laid by him were Masonic cornerstones for all those illustrious buildings which make up government. And Martin, what's also interesting to me, when he refers to this one that had received a beating, Rocky, something great was going to happen to him, and he was going to be basically, become a Superman, a superpower. And the cross over there was a symbol for that. And Donald Trump had this beat-up image, and then he rose to the occasion. What about the Catholic Church?
Same.
Didn't it receive a mortal wound?
Yeah, it seemed like a
mortal wound. Wasn't it supposed to rise like the phoenix out of the ashes?
Exactly.
Isn't that the mural in the United Nations?
Yeah.
And who were the great thinkers behind these organizations that actually started all of these things? The Bilderbergers and all the organizations that led again to the regathering of humanity under one Tower of Babel. Weren't they all high Masons and Catholic agents?
For sure.
Now, Donald Trump claims to have a Protestant background, right? Presbyterian.
Yeah.
But his wife is staunch Catholic. And when they went to the Pope, of course, they were dressed accordingly to the traditions. And 4 years ago, he praised Catholicism. And this time round, at that famous dinner that Kamala decided not to attend, he did exactly the same.
Yeah.
So what is his relationship with Catholicism? Let him speak for himself.
Now more than ever, our nation needs a renewal of the values this organization promotes, and that the Catholic faithful live out each and every day in peace. We love the Catholic people. We love the Catholic religion. And above all, we respect it greatly. As president, I will always support you in your effort to serve our fellow citizens and to lift up all humanity. I will protect the Catholic Church, and I will defend the rights of religious believers of every race, religion, color, and creed.
We're at the Al Smith dinner, of course. Tell me, why did you decide it was important to be here, and what message is Kamala Harris sending by not being here to Catholic voters?
Well, I think you're honoring the Catholic Church, and, you know, I've been a longtime supporter, and I'm surprised she's not here. I think she's the first one in in decades, actually, to miss it as a candidate. It was always been a tradition. So I'm happy only that the Catholics are going to vote for Trump now. But, no, look, I have a special relationship with the Catholic Church, and I think it was very important to be here.
Yeah. I've been noticing on your social media posts at your rallies, you're playing the Ave Maria. You're posting Happy Birthday, Mary, a St. Michael prayer to ward off evil. Is that telling voters something about your spiritual journey? What is that?
No, I don't think so. It's just beautiful to me. I mean, I look at the whole thing, the words and the pictures. The pictures are so beautiful. And, yeah, I put up some stuff. Somebody else asked me that same question. Yeah. And it's really that I think it's really very beautiful.
The Pope was asked about your candidacy and Kamala Harris, and he instructed Catholic voters to vote for the lesser of two evils. Who do you think he means and why?
Well, I think he wants them to vote for me, and I stand for really everything that you stand for and that the church stands for, and she doesn't. She's a very different kind of a person. She's a Marxist. Her father was a Marxist and still is a Marxist, and they are not big into religion, I will tell you, and I'm not just talking about the Catholic religion. I'm talking about any religion. The whole Democrat Party's gone really radical left, and I'm the opposite. I am totally in favor of religion, and I also like the Catholic Church a lot.
Well, Martin, can it get any clearer?
I can't say that you can. What else can you say to make it more clear?
Do you remember that he knelt down before this image of John Paul II? So these are all very interesting things. And we need these supermen to make the phoenix rise out of the ashes. Yeah. So let's see what they have in mind in terms of that.
That the X-Men have now arrived in reality to rescue the Republic. This is a transformation that has not yet been fully noted, even by the Trump campaign itself, despite its truly and surreally revolutionary nature. First and foremost among these new supporters and colleagues of the former president is Elon Musk. He truly is, and so comically, an X-Man, as is starkly evidenced by the new name of the controversial social media platform he now owns and was once known as Twitter. He has been struggling to build X, the everything platform, for decades with that particular moniker in his mind the whole time. The X-Men, like the Avengers, was a group of misfit mutants who came together to save the normies from the various monsters of the world. It is frequently the case that life imitates art, and there were perhaps real reasons stirring in the collective unconscious of the West, inclining us to look toward the eccentric and supernormal for our salvation. Fiction meets reality in the strangest of ways. In any case, Trump is now playing Charles Xavier to a strange group of mutants, or if the similar metaphor of the Avengers is more attractive conceptually, Captain America to the gods and superheroes. The Tony Stark billionaire, although importantly, without the arms dealing. The six of them together, Trump, Musk, Kennedy, Gabbard, Ramaswamy, and Vance, should be able to keep every single member in check. And that bodes well for the creativity, productivity, and stability of the future Trump X-Men team administration. Wouldn't all you daring and oh-so-cinema-obsessed theatrical Americans love to have the adventure that such a mutant group of strange personalities running the show would offer for the next 4 years or longer? Trump, Musk, Kennedy, Gabbard, Ramaswamy, Vance, that's a dream team.
Martin, if that's a dream team, do you think it's associated with the dream of Daniel and John, the Revelator?
That's brilliantly put. Yes, definitely.
I think this could be very interesting because I'm also one who studies the dreams, especially of Daniel and the Revelation.
Excellently put.
Now, Martin, so when it comes to this dream team, and that has now sort of taken the reins in the United States of America, then they also must have certain ideologies, of course, which are in line with the Jesuit picture. Now, the Jesuits created futurism.
Yeah.
In order to take the heat of the papacy as the Antichrist system. And, of course, Israel plays a major part in that, although Jesus had said the house is desolate and that we are now living in a time of spiritual Israel. So to bring in that ideology and to make a literal temple a reality, you have to be very pro-Israel, right?
Yeah.
Now, the Bible is very clear that the temple is not a temple of stone, but ye are the temple of the living God, living stones built into a spiritual house, not a physical house. So all of these ideologies are coming together, Martin, but they are underpinned by Jesuit theologies and counter-theologies as far as the Reformation is concerned.
Yes. Wow. We're in for an interesting time.
President Trump has been the best president for Israel and for the Middle East in our lifetime. We have to get President Trump back in as the commander-in-chief. The Jewish community needs it. The world needs it. America needs it. And I just want to take a moment to salute you and thank you. And let's take America back. And let's stand shoulder to shoulder with the greatest ally we've ever known, the state of Israel, as we fight evil all over the world.
You're seeing a scrambling all over the Middle East of countries suddenly trying to behave differently because they know a new sheriff has come to town, and this isn't a one-bullet Barney with a bullet in his shirt pocket. This is the real deal. I mean, this is Donald Trump that they are afraid of, and I'm just ecstatic that he has asked me to be part of what I think is going to be not just a realignment of political parties and many institutions in America, but really the world, to bring peace that we desperately need. And quite frankly, when I look at all these people that he's picked, I'm incredibly impressed with all of them. I feel like that I'm a 1995 Ford pickup trying to enter the Indy 500. I don't see myself in the same view as I do some of these wonderful people he's picked. But I'm honored beyond even description to be able to serve my country and this president in a nation that I've been traveling to since July of 1973 when I was 17, made about 100 trips there. And I couldn't be more grateful to this president for giving me the opportunity to serve the country and him.
I would imagine if the Elise Stefanik that lectured the pro-Hamas professors before Congress, if that Elise Stefanik shows up at the United Nations, that's going to be a little bit of a shakeup, the likes of which maybe we haven't seen in our lifetime. That could be entertaining.
It'll be very entertaining, but more importantly, it's going to be a great revelation of what's wrong at the UN and why for many years I've never understood why we kept dumping money into it. I've often said get a jackhammer, hammer the thing right off and float it into the East River and invite any country who thinks they could enjoy it to have it. She's not going to be invited to a lot of after 5 cocktail parties in Manhattan where she'll be saluted by the swells. But that's not why she's going, and it's why she's going to be terrific in that position. She's bold, strong, unafraid, and will take nothing off of any of them. And we need to be bold. There's no reason that you have people like Iran and communist China on human rights committees talking about human rights when they violate them more than anybody. So it's time for a complete reset of our internal and international relationships. That's what Donald Trump is clearly setting out to do. And I couldn't be more delighted to see this take place.
You're partnering with the smartest guy in the country. There's no doubt about it. And the richest guy. But you look at Elon Musk, and he's a genius. If you can figure out a way to go save those astronauts that are lost in space, God bless you. I could never figure that out in 500 lifetimes. So I admire that. He's talking about $2 billion in cuts by identifying waste, fraud, and abuse. Is that a realistic number? That's a big number.
Yeah, $2 billion isn't a big number, but $2 trillion is, Sean, and that's what we're looking at here. Look,
$2 trillion. I stand corrected.
No, I want to be very clear about the scale. I want to be very clear about the scale that we're thinking here. We're not thinking small. We're playing big here because we have a once-in-a-generation mandate right now. The American people have voted for drastic reform of the government, and our federal government is broken. It's no secret that it is a fourth branch of government, the administrative state that makes most of the rules, that creates a federal bureaucracy that's hampering our economy. So what do we want to do? We want to go in and slash and burn that bureaucracy to help Americans, stimulate the economy, and to restore self-governance again, Sean. The people we elect to run the government, they're not even the ones who run the government anymore. It's these unelected bureaucrats. Republican politicians have talked about fixing this for a long time, not with a lot of progress. So I do think it's going to take a couple of outsiders. Elon and I have built a great friendship over the last year. We're working together intensely, and we're not going to stop till we get the job done.
Anyway, so if that's George Soros of the right, that's me. Okay. I'm incredibly excited about the future, and the public has given us a mandate that could not be more clear. It's the clearest mandate. The people have spoken. The people want change. They will get what they asked for. I think this is going to be the most transformative presidency perhaps since the founding of the country. And President Trump is picking the cabinet to do it. You can see that the choices are people who are actually going to make change. It's not going to be business as usual. We're going to shake things up. It's going to be a revolution. And we're headed towards, I think, a fantastic future. I'm super excited. I look forward to experiencing that with everyone. Thank you.
I've made it a living hell for the swamp rats, and many of them are retiring now. In fact, CNN just ran an article blaming me for their departures. You are welcome, Mullen. You see, when I offer these critiques that include the conduct of some fellow Republicans, I catch a lot of heat. Don't get me wrong, I'd prefer to just fight the Democrats. But if the Republicans are going to dress up like Democrats in drag, then I will lead the fight against them too.
They seem to be fired up.
Yeah.
And they're talking about shaking up the United Nations, shaking up Iran and China and all of them. Now, prophecy tells me that this second beast will force the entire world to give homage to the first beast.
Yeah.
So, Martin, in order to do that, there must be enough teeth.
That's for sure.
So there must be a real shake-up, because right now, America's image is somewhat tarnished, don't you think?
And you can see that these people mean business. So do you think there can be something up the sleeve of the Democrats still?
So, Martin, do the Democrats have something up their sleeve? Well, Martin, they could have something up their sleeve. There are two possibilities here. And either one fits. It doesn't really matter. Because the watchword is ordo ab chaos. You have to get order out of chaos. So the one scenario is they take a back seat and they've played their role in bringing the Hegelian dialectic to the point where it is now. Where the public has said enough of this far extreme stuff. let's move to the other side and see if we can get this pendulum to go where the scriptures said it should go, right? That's the one extreme. The other possibility is, how about telling Russia, we're going to allow missiles to be fired right at you, no matter where you are, and let's escalate it so that we have World War III. And it's interesting that Sweden and Finland have warned their public that we are heading for that war. They just did that now again, that it is highly likely that that war will now take place. Well, then, Martin, then you could have an interesting situation, because under those circumstances, you could have martial law, and all of this might not even be implemented. Wouldn't that be interesting?
Well,
it will probably be war and civil war and everything in between. So that will really be chaos. But let's hope that that doesn't play out, because the Bible also says, peace, peace.
Yeah, peace and safety.
And then sudden destruction.
So maybe for a short time there's a...
We don't know what's going to happen, but certainly we're in for a ride.
And then what's the other scenario?
Well, Martin, we also are told in the scriptures there will be a time of trouble such as never was. But that could be associated with the implementation of the mark of the beast and the aftermath thereof. Another trick up the sleeve would be if Biden retired.
Yeah.
What if he retired and said, well, let's give the reins to Kamala, then we will have a female president. And if we then get martial law, then it'll get even more interesting. So these are all possibilities. We will watch the movie and see which one plays out, right?
Exactly. This is an interesting movie.
But anyway, the way it's playing out now with this administration fits perfectly with the biblical picture.
Absolutely.
So the other ones would be surprise moves, but the end game would still be the same.
Exactly the same, just like Kevin Roberts said.
So, Kevin Roberts, what else does he have to say about the administrations?
A lot of people to talk to, and look, I'm looking at these things happen pretty fast. Let's see, Marco Rubio, apparently going to be Secretary of State. Kristi Noem, Homeland Security Secretary. Lee Zeldin in charge of the EPA. Kash Patel, somewhere in the intelligence community, not quite sure where. Elise Stefanik's going to be the ambassador to the United Nations, and the list goes on. I commented you had a smile on your face just before we came on. You do. Donald Trump won, and so therefore, and by the way, the House is now officially secured for the Republicans, so it is a trifecta. And I look at some of these appointments. I mean, obviously you must be pleased. We are steering the country back away from the brink and hopefully back down the road in a normal fashion. When you see some of these appointments, are you pleased?
Honestly, I'm ecstatic. I mean, this is exceeding our expectations, and our expectations were high because President-elect Trump, of course, has a proven record. He's also obviously has the profile of a CEO. And you and I and so many in your audience know that great CEOs understand that they don't have the answers to all of the questions. The one thing that they do really well is appoint talented people to develop those answers and implement plans. And so from his appointment of Susie Wiles as his chief of staff to my friend Stephen Miller as deputy chief of staff. And of course, I do have to say my favorite, which would surprise no one, including the president-elect, Tom Homan, our visiting fellow at the Heritage Foundation as border czar, who's already just sending signals that you better go back if you're here illegally. But all of the names that you mentioned, and then some that are rumored to be named in the next couple of days, this has the making, Steve, of one of the best cabinets in modern American history. And that is fitting because there is a lot of work ahead.
Yeah, this is like an all-star group. This is like the Avengers. I mean, I hate to go there, but it's kind of what we're looking at here.
If you think about those in the intelligence, in the State Department area, if in fact the rumors are true that Senator Rubio will be appointed, we also know that our friend Congressman Mike Waltz will be National Security Advisor. Just take these two men as examples. These two guys, of course, grew up as sons of the Reagan Revolution, emphasizing a foreign policy mantra of peace through strength. They understand and have been explicit, especially in recent years, that peace through strength is not neoconservative adventurism as we saw under the George W. Bush administration, but rather making sure that our enemies fear us.
So, Martin, that just confirms again that all of those appointees are in line with the Heritage Foundation.
Yeah, with Project 2025.
Does that contain Sunday legislation?
100%.
100%. And it will default to Sunday.
Yes.
Even if you keep another day. It says in that document quite plainly. You know, that document does make room for another day, like the Seventh-day Adventists keep or some other groups. But you can't please everybody, and the default will be Sunday.
Yeah.
Now, when they're talking about synchronized free time, then it can only be one day.
Sunday.
Because the issue is the family. And I was watching an article or reading an article on the Heritage Foundation and what it is saying, and this administration, that the central issue is to put the family back in the center.
That's Catholic.
That's exactly what the Pope is standing for, and that is why they're talking about synchronized free time. Now, in order to do that, you must get this religious aspect back into the education system. So the Bible has to come back as a doorstop, of course, but it's there. It's a historical document. And, of course, some of these extreme views must be rescinded. They must become more aligned to the ideology of the Ten Commandments, etc. And the left is going crazy and saying the church is, you know, invading the territory that it shouldn't invade according to the Constitution. So there was an interesting discussion on CNN on this issue. And I think it's worthwhile listening to that one. This is brand new stuff.
Yeah.
As you know, your state's Attorney General's office says you don't have the authority for this mandate to play that prayer video. So what authority do you have to mandate schools to show your prayer video where you also pray for President-elect Trump?
Look, I've continued to hear the gaslighting from the left, and frankly, even from this network, pushing lies about what's going on across America. President Trump has a clear mandate. He wants prayer back in school. He wants radical leftism out of the classroom, wants our kids to be patriotic, want parents back in charge with school choice. We're enacting upon that agenda here in Oklahoma. That's what our parents want. Every county in Oklahoma voted for President Trump. His agenda is crystal clear, and we're going to enact it in the state of Oklahoma.
All right. First of all, the Constitution is not crystal clear on that. It doesn't have God in it. There is this establishment clause in the First Amendment, which the Supreme Court has routinely said it requires the separation of church and state and public schools. There are many cases hold on, I'm speaking. There are many cases where the Supreme Court has routinely ruled on that. You went after woke teachers and the radical left in your announcement for attacking religious liberty, but your critics are saying that by requiring Bibles in every classroom and requiring this prayer video, you're trying to impose your religion on students in violation of the Establishment Clause. They say the Constitution, scholars say the Constitution is crystal clear on freedom of religion, not enforcing one religion, your religion, on students. What do you say?
Look, CNN doesn't have to like it. Left-wing activists don't have to like it.
I'm just talking about facts. It's not my opinion.
Document. The Bible is a historical document. You can't rewrite history, okay?
I'm not saying that the Bible isn't an important part of understanding this. What I'm saying is your critics, including a lot of parents, are saying you're trying to enforce your religion, your specific religion, Christianity, onto students, not just by requiring Bibles in every classroom, but also by requiring this prayer video as well, where you also pray for Donald Trump. Just last week, this federal judge ruled it's unconstitutional for the Ten Commandments to be shown in a classroom. How is what you're trying to do different?
Well, it's a radical federal judge way out of step with the American people and the Constitution. Here's the reality. We have the right to express our religious beliefs. We absolutely do. That doesn't stop at a schoolhouse. I was crystal clear in there. We're not telling kids they have to pray, but we are telling kids they have the right to pray if they so choose.
You know, look, you're talking about how important the Bible is in U.S. history and the founding of the country, but this was a country that was not founded on a specific religion, and that if you are really, if it's important to talk about religious texts and how it weaves into the history of the U.S., then why not also include the Quran? Why not also include the Book of Mormon? Why not also include these other religious texts?
Well, let's talk about this for a second. Everyone who signed that list, everybody suing me, they're the same people that want gender, queer, and flamer in the classroom under the guise of...
That's not necessarily true. You are painting everyone with a broad brush.
The Bible is the most read book in American history, and the left doesn't want our kids to know anything about it. They don't want the kids to understand that it played a huge role in American history. That is academic malpractice. We have to get back to teaching American exceptionalism, American values, where those things came from. That's just history, and the left doesn't have to... You're
not answering my question about these with other religious texts. If that is your reason, if you were like, I want our students to learn about the founding of this country and the Bible played a big role in that, then why not include other religious texts that also throughout history played a role, such as I pointed out, the Book of Mormon, such as, the Quran.
Sure, look, in a world history class, you can absolutely talk about those, but let's be clear, in American history, the Bible played a unique role in shaping this history, and you said no religion. Thomas Jefferson said our rights came from God, and again, look, maybe we all need to go back and study some of this, especially on CNN, to understand the role.
Thomas Jefferson rejected part of Christian doctrine. Thomas Jefferson promoted freedom of religion. One of his top 3 accomplishments on his gravestone is promoting a law in Virginia for the freedom of religion. So if you want to, and then John Adams, would you say that John Adams is a key founder of the United States? Do you think he is? Okay.
Absolutely. Talked about
John Adams signed a treaty in 1797 saying the government of the United States of America is not in any sense founded on the Christian religion.
That was an interesting discussion. I think the CNN spokesperson had a point.
On a few of those things.
A few of those things. And of course, he's using it to his advantage. And interesting that he uses the term gaslighting. Interesting discussion.
Well,
but Martin, they are implementing a certain religion.
For sure. And just why we're saying that she had some good points is because a lot of people will probably be very agitated when we say that. But it is that you don't legislate religion.
You can't legislate religion. But if they're going to go in this route, then the very first thing that they will want to do to protect the family is to bring in synchronized rest. Yeah. So that means Sunday legislation. And that is the mark of the beast, whether we like it or whether we don't like it. People say, how can you say that? Rome says it, not we. She says it is the mark of our ecclesiastical power that we have changed the day of rest from Saturday to Sunday. And by the way, the Sabbath day has a definite article. That means there's only one. You can't pick and choose which one you want. So are they going to go that route? What is the discussion in this regard? Shall we listen to some of these statements?
Yes.
We could keep going on that, but the big thing that you're right, like we kind of got to talk about.
I really want to talk about it.
Christian states, like government. You're right.
Yeah. So you're talking about like every government in the world, and tell me if I'm wrong, because this is how I'm understanding it. Every government in the world should enforce laws that everyone has to rest on the Sabbath, and everyone has to cast out idols, cannot practice idolatry in any fashion, and they have to put God first.
So right? No, that's extreme. I'm not saying that every nation should do that. I'm saying every nation will do that, because I'm not only a theonomist, Mike, I also happen to be post-millennial. So I was being facetious. I know, I don't think that's extreme. I think you're absolutely right. What you just said is my view. And not only do I think it should be done by every nation, I think it will be. I truly believe it. I think the nations are Christ's inheritance.
So you do think it should be done?
Yes, I do. Should and will. Not just should, but will.
So we should, as Christians, we should then, all of us, be working together to ensure that minimally the 10 commandments are enforced through governmental laws across the country. So no sports on Sundays or Saturdays. I'm assuming that you would think the Sabbath is actually Saturday.
No. So
Okay.
Both Westminster and
that's a
1689. No, you're right.
That's a side issue, but
But yeah. So both Westminster and 1689, the Reformed view is they're all Sabbatarian, but they would say that the Sabbath has been not removed but renewed by Christ, who is Lord of the Sabbath by virtue of his resurrection from the last day of the week to the first. Is what the 1689 and Westminster Confession say. And
Sure.
of course you can push
and
back.
I won't
on
even.
it, but I
won't even push back. On
yeah,
it,
of course you can push back on it. I'm just articulating my position. That's where I would stay with the Sabbath. But yes, the Sabbath, I think nations should observe Sabbath keeping laws.
Martin? He's very biblical in that point of view.
Oh, for sure.
Huh?
Definitely spot on.
All right.
But unfortunately, you're not supposed to want to climb on that bandwagon.
Oh, I understand. So, Martin, if the Bible says this is going to happen, and he says it will happen from a totally different perspective, not a biblical one, but from a reconstructionist perception, then, the dovetailing between what Scripture says and what they are doing is just amazing.
It's amazing.
So, Martin, when they actually go this far, as is written in their document, then, Martin, can we expect that great time of trouble and the persecution that goes along with it, the no buying and selling, and eventually a death decree?
This same person that we just watched, remember, quite a while back we showed videos where they said, this is Christian country. If you don't like it,
get out.
Get out.
Correct. So in the last great conflict, let's quote from the Spirit of Prophecy, of the controversy with Satan, those who are loyal to God will see every earthly support cut off, because they refuse to break his law in obedience to earthly powers. They will be forbidden to buy or sell. It will finally be decreed that they shall be put to death. That's from the Bible directly. But to the obedient is given the promise, he shall dwell on high, his place of defense shall be the munitions of rocks. Bread shall be given him, his water shall be sure. Quoting Isaiah 33, verse 16. By this promise the children of God will live. When the earth shall be wasted with famine, they shall be fed. They shall not be ashamed in the evil time, and in the days of famine they shall be satisfied, quoting Psalms 37:19. At that time of distress, the prophet Habakkuk looked forward, and his words express the faith of the church. Although the fig tree shall not blossom, neither shall the fruit be in the vines, the labor of the olive shall fail, and the fields shall yield no meat. The flock shall be cut off from the fold, and there shall be no herd in the stalls. Yet will I rejoice in the Lord. I will joy in the God of my salvation. So, Martin, that's what's in store for God's people according to the Scriptures. The second beast is making an image of the first beast. The second beast is raising its voice and telling the nations, shape up or shape out.
Does it also speak like a dragon?
It speaks like a dragon when it enforces legislation to control conscience, and particularly legislation that is contrary to the Word of God, but in harmony with Rome. Yeah. Then we are at the point where the wound is healed. And the whole world worshipped and wondered after the beast. May the Lord give us wisdom. I am hopeful that we can soon see the termination of this catastrophe, which is called a planet in rebellion against the government of God.
I agree.
Let's pray. Heavenly Father, the Scriptures are clear. The pieces of the puzzle are coming together. And you have said when we see these things, we should lift up our heads because our salvation draweth nigh. I believe our salvation draweth nigh. And I pray that in the outpouring of the latter rain, many eyes will be opened, see the trap that has been laid, and avoid it by hiding under the shadow of your wing, is my prayer in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.